leather, yellow leather, red leather. Paso, YouTube, Archman here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the small Inkosi. I'm actually going to fix this camera angle just a little bit, I think, first. Oh, that makes a shadow. Maybe that's why I did it in the first place. Sorry about the jiggling. Yeah, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about the um, small Inkosi, mainly because I feel like it's kind of the right order of things as far as the stuff, the knives that I've talked about. It's kind of the right time for a little update with the small Inkosi, brought to you by the New Belgium Voodoo Ranger Imperial IPA, which I'm going to enjoy in my Elevation Beer Company Tulip glass. Probably my favorite glass. Um, yeah, first thing, I might overlap a little bit from my initial impressions video, um, but I'm going to try not to do that. I did rewatch. I was going to redo this video last night, um, so I actually watched my old video, which I never do, to try to not overlap. But well, that was last night, so I'm going to try not to. Um, Cheers, Imperial IPA fans. So, I don't think I mentioned in my first Inkosi video that this Inkosi basically was kind of an impulse buy. I went to a knife shop. I knew they carried Chris Reeve knives. It's Castlegate Knives. You can find their Instagram. You can look at their website, Castlegate Knives. You can just Google search that. Um, their Instagram would kind of lead you to believe that their inventory is a little bit heftier than their online inventory, and it's like no comparison. Like they had a really impressive selection of knives. Anyway, long story short, I went in there thinking Daddy's walking out with a UTX 85 or maybe an Ultratech, maybe even a UTX 70. But I was kind of thinking, yeah, I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna really like, a Microtech OTF. And I thought they were cool, but man, I just was kind of like, mm, I don't know. I I played with them. I thought they were really cool. Honestly, fantastic. But at the same time, recently got this guy, very recently, and I don't know. I just kind of I could not get myself to do it. They had so many different ones in stock, and I was like, I kind of like just a regular drop point, non-serrated knife, obviously, Um, and I could not convince myself to pick up a UTX 85 or a UTX 70 or anything like that. So I ended up kind of going. I was in there for an hour. Thank God it was. I usually don't get a chance to hang out in a knife store very long because I don't really want to, because I don't usually have too much that I'm really interested in, except for like, Spydercos and Benchmades at MSRP, which is just crazy. Um, So I went back to the Chris Reeve section and I was like, have a 31 on the way. What should I do? I should get something new. So I chose an Inkosi with their Insingo blade. And as some of you guys probably know, then 2 days later, I got my 31 in the mail. So I've had a good amount of time not a good amount of time, I've had a week to kind of compare a couple of the different Chris Reeve knives offerings. And to be honest, I totally expected for the 31 to get pressed into, I wouldn't say EDC, but at least like in the rotation of carry. Um, and I really do like the 31. It's stellar, but there is there is a je ne sais quoi to this small Inkosi that just like je ne sais quoi. I can't explain, you know, like there's something about this knife that I really like, and I can't really completely put my finger on it, because like it has some lackluster aspects to it. One is first and foremost, I'm just like, why do I can't like, but getting to this thumb stud is actually pretty cramped. Like, I don't know if people say that or not, but it's not even close to as easy to access the thumb stud as it is on a 21 or a 31. I'm going to say they're exactly the same. There's a little bit more scalloping on the 31 than there is on the 21, but they're virtually identical. I mean, the difference is so drastic that, I mean, it doesn't look like it would be that crazy of a difference, but it's so drastic that it feels like there's just a never ending void for your thumb. Like there is no scale on this side. It's that big of a difference. This feels like it's made to be like easily accessed. And honestly, the small Inkosi, to me at least, really feels like that it just, I'm sure there's always trade-off with design. So I mean, I design a lot of my own projects with remodels, kitchen remodels, bathroom remodels, porches, pergolas, and there's always going to be trade-offs. And I think maybe in this case they wanted the handle to be a little wider than a small Sebenza, but they didn't want the blade to be too crazy wide. So I think that they must have, Chris Reeve must have, because I'm pretty sure Chris Reeve designed the 25 and the Inkosi, which then became the small Inkosi when they introduced the 25 as changed into the large Inkosi. But you can see here, obviously, this little millaway here for the thumb stud access is really in a weird shape. It's kind of an oblong, pulled away shape on the large, but on the small, it really is borderline like, what were they thinking when they did that? Like, it's such a strange and just odd looking, and it looks like an oddly performing, shape. A lot of people are like, why would you can't get your fingers in that? Well, that's not what it is. Your finger is this profile. So it's actually a large finger choil here. That is just a thumb stud access. And it's surprisingly comfortable. It really is, honestly. I kind of like I brushed upon, I think, in the last in the initial impressions video on this Inkosi, ergos are not all they're cracked up to be, and you really got to watch out for these fucking, armchair reviewers. I do tabletop reviews too, but like I honestly really do take my knives out and use them, and I try not to overthink it. I try to just use it. So you got to be careful when you get people that are like, all right, so you grab the knife just like this, and then you put your finger right up in here, and then you put that finger smell here, and then, terrible ergos. That's just not how you use a knife. You pull the fucking shit out of your pocket. You might grab it in just like a pinch grip like this and just do your work with it or whatever it is that you're doing. You might grab it, like I mentioned in the other video, and just use a chest cut. And in that case, none of this shit even comes into play. You're not really squeezing the knife. You're kind of just cradling it. And I find that, quite honestly, that is the majority of my knife use. So obviously any folding knife is not going to be something that you're white knuckle cutting with like fucking Survivor Man. You're going to be pretty fucking miserable doing that with any, really great folding knife. So it's important to, regardless of what the situation is and how a person is using a knife, don't overthink it, close your eyes, feel it, do the task that you're doing, but don't overthink how you're holding your knife. Just allow this thing to flow in your hand and use leverage. You might push with your thumb rather than there's just so many different ways to use these things. But yeah, I guess back to the je ne sais quoi aspect of this thing. Because I want to, I guess I'll mention here real quick, because I knew I wanted to press this thing immediately into rotation, and I also knew that I was taking my 21 out of rotation, not selling it or anything. I took the clip. You can see I have a brand new clip on this knife, and it's all kind of bowed out how the CRK clips come. So the 21 has the clip that came with the Inkosi, and that's actually the main reason this clip looks the way it does. I did actually climb up on the ladder, and leaning up on the ladder do these scuffs that are the more prominent scuffs that are on there, but it had a couple little snail trails on it. But moving back to the je ne sais quoi, man, it really is hard for me to pinpoint exactly what it is that I really dig about this knife. But I think part of it is that it doesn't feel as fancy as a 21. It feels like more like just a fucking, I mean, the fit and finish, the way that, it sounds, the way that it feels, all that stuff is pure Chris Reeve knives, as near as I can tell, which I think I can tell. But there's something about it, though. I don't know if it's the look. I don't know if it has a little bit more heft to it than a 21 or a 31. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's something about this knife that kind of just calls to be used a little bit more. I don't know exactly why I feel that way, but I do feel that way. I don't believe it's the Inkosi blade shape. I still would say that I'm more of a fan of the drop point. I mean, time will tell as I kind of press this more and more into use. I'm not like a complete fucking idiot when it comes to enjoying my knives and testing them. There were times where I was kind of pulling back from, this is for my handlebars on my commuter bike. My wife and I were riding bikes this afternoon. Shit, no, I forgot what exactly I was saying. Drop point. Oh, I remember what I was saying. Yeah, I put this knife away from time to time this past week, and had this in my EDC bag as well, because my large Inkosi is my main work knife. Actually, I've got two, what I would call main work knives, and one is a Spyderco Endura, and the other one is my large Inkosi, and my Carruthers, I would love for my Carruthers to be my absolute 100%, main carry knife, but I am a carpenter. In order to be a productive carpenter and make myself an asset to my clients, I feel the need to wear a tool belt with tool bags on it, and that doesn't mix too well with having a fixed blade on your hip. So enter the Inkosi. But this Inkosi is, first off, it also really kind of calls to being used more than, say, a Sebenza does to me. I still always say, and I will always say, if I personally was to have one Chris Reeve knife, it would be a Sebenza. At this point, for me, I would probably say that would be a large, plain Sebenza 31 is probably what I would have if I was just to have one Chris Reeve knife. Only because I think this knife feels, it's a psychological thing for me with just feeling like the Inkosi begs to be used more. But the Sebenza it's a more diverse knife because, in my opinion, I think it's just a sexier knife. I think it's a less of an eyebrow raiser. I think when it comes down to it, I don't know. It's more classy, you know. But it obviously is as capable. Um, I really don't believe that the Inkosi would be that much more capable than a Sebenza. You can see here with the Insingo grind, um, the drop point is considerably more robust. I don't know how that looks on camera. I mean, I can see it on my screen, but in person, it is considerable. Um, and then when you look at this 31 is actually kind of a fatty, to be honest, which doesn't really necessarily bother me because one of the reasons I'm attracted to Chris Reeve knives is because, I mean, it is going to be unquestionably more durable than, you know, some of the other knives that I personally am attracted to, such as the Spyderco Native 5. Spyderco Native 5 is probably my most highest recommended knife. I've got an aftermarket 3D clip on mine, 3D machined clip on mine. But, you know, gosh, I mean, I would say honestly that just because there's such a significant portion of the blade removed, that right there alone is going to put this, you know, a Chris Reeve knife ahead in durability. It probably shouldn't matter. That's kind of cool looking. Spotlight on the stump stud. But anyway, I don't know. We all have our little psychological shit whenever it comes to knife carry. You know, like if you don't carry your knife to work one day, you're like, oh fuck, man. Like, you know, does it really matter? No, it doesn't. Same thing with like a difference between a Spyderco and a Chris Reeve knife. Does it really matter? Probably not. But god damn it, it might. So, but yeah, suffice it to say, this little Inkosi has really surprised me. I don't know if I've said or not, but I mean, I almost got this knife only because I was just like, I want to be able to have, um, you know, some experience with it so I can go, you know what, this small Inkosi is bullshit. But really, my experience is like, oh, it actually is way more ergonomic than you would think. I wouldn't necessarily call it ergonomic because, I mean, let's just face it, if I grab my small 21 here, um, this actually I told you I put the Inkosi clip on here and it's a little loose because it's wanting to sit up here and it's, yeah, so don't mind that. But if I grab the small 21, I mean, no comparison. You can hold this knife however you want. You can do whatever you want. There's no little doodads or scallops or choils or whatever you want to call this shit that's on here going on. But somehow they still pull it off. Same with the large Inkosi. Like, I don't normally like a knife that has any kind of fucking, you know, predetermined places for your fingers. I mean, I want to be able to move around on this thing, but it doesn't seem to impair use, and it doesn't really seem to impair comfort. I really like my large Inkosi. It easily is my most carried Chris Reeve knife for sure, and in my top 3 of most carried knives like ever. Insingo blade, as far as like my initial impressions on that. So let me just kind of say, like, a lot of people like the Insingo blade because of aesthetics. I know that people like convince themselves that there's other reasons they like it, and I'm sure that's probably fucking true. But again, this is a big psychological shit that we're all doing here. And one of the things for me, if I'm being truly honest with myself, is I just think that the closed look of, unfortunately I don't have obviously a drop point in Inkosi, but you know, it's gonna be similar. Like if you look at a closed Insingo blade on any of the Chris Reeve knives, it sticks a lot farther out. and it kind of goes into the handle down here, such as this one. And I don't know, I just don't really like that. I feel like it's a little bit better on the Inkosi than it is on the Sebenza, but just kind of is what it is. I don't like it aesthetically, and I don't like this swedge here. One thing that is cool about the swedge, though, that I just noticed like a couple of nights ago, is it's really cool the way they ground it. It's rounded this way. If you look at this profile, you can see the swedge is ground. It's kind of rounded this way, but if you probably can't tell here, but if you were to look at it this way, it's actually it's concave. It's ground like carved in like this. So that's actually pretty sweet. But that said, though, I think it's gaudy and I don't like it. I like minimalism. I like minimalist, you know, appearance. And I also feel like just the thinner profile of the drop point is going to be a more diverse tool. Again, that said, though, obviously I'm not trying to get this thing into any small areas, so I'm not having any issues with that at all. Lockup on this thing, like I said, I try to get all my knives firsthand. I like to feel like I feel like in order to have a true impression of a knife, like I gotta know that it's pristine when I get it. Like I don't want to think, oh, they've been spine whacking it, or it's been living in a humid environment, or whatever it might be. You know, like I want to know that I've got something that has no compromises. You know, and also I really enjoy being the person that makes the marks on them. But yeah, so far so good with this thing. I'd be honest with you guys, like I don't not see anything else that I want to go in my pocket. Once I do start getting some scratches on this thing, obviously I will not be like rotating something else out to take its place. I'll just kind of go, ah, fuck, I guess I'm gonna mark this thing up. I mean, one of the reasons I buy Chris Reeve knives is because most of the knives that I buy, I try to buy knives that I feel confident, you know, not necessarily misusing, but having a diversity in their use, you know, like being able to not only be a great cutting tool, but also being durable enough to do some light prying. And I definitely don't love how thin this blade is out at the tip. I mean, it's not like I got my Delica here just for comparisons. Obviously, it's, you know, it's funny though, I say obvious, but I've not actually compared them yet. But yeah, so obviously it is considerably, I mean, the Inkosi is thinner at the tip, it looks like, but it very quickly broadens out, where the Delica here is just paper thin. It is a paper thin little folder. And you don't really hear people having problems with their Delicas, despite having a big hole in the blade, despite having really thin blade stock, and despite being I would assume that VG10 is significantly less tough and durable than S35VN, especially with Chris Reeve's kind of proprietary, less hard heat treat, I guess, softer heat treat, which I'm all about. Honestly, for me, I don't fucking need M390. I don't fucking need S90V. I don't need CPM20CV. You know, I really like S35VN. Every knife could be S35VN for me, except for like a fixed blade. For me, fixed blades, every knife might as well just be CPM3V, unless it's going to be in, you know, wet conditions a lot, and in that case, you might want to consider getting something in LC200N. which is a fantastic steel too. But yeah, I guess suffice it to say, the small Inkosi has really impressed me so far. I think I'm going to, again, I'm gonna go off on another little tangent. I think one thing that I'm gonna try to do that I don't like about it is, I mean, I'm sure they just were like, it needs to be different, so we're gonna put these big domed screws on there. But one thing that I'm gonna hopefully do is, at some point in the near future, I'm just gonna take down one of my. I'm actually gonna take down. I plan on at some point in the future taking down all three of these guys on a live video and just doing some comparisons of the way they're constructed and whatnot. But I want to see if I can replace these big fat dome screws with the Sebenza screws that are much more low profile. Like you can see, like there's no comparison. And I do prefer a domed screw to like a flat screw. I think personally, I mean, it's not like these are cheap or look cheap, but when you compare it with, and this is a 2011 Sebenza, so they're all scratched up and whatnot. Not really fair. This really hasn't seen all that much use, but again, I think way sexier looking screws, the little dome design. We got these though. Obviously the old Delica has a super similar screw to the Sebenza. But anyway, so that'll be kind of interesting. Find out if that works or not. Because I mean, shit, as long as you're going to be particular enough to go with a Chris Reeve knife in the first place, I think it's totally acceptable to go like, but I think it should have sexier screws. Or I think it could have sexier screws, therefore, you know, I'm going to try to make that happen. So it should just be, yeah, 1, 2, 3 of those. This one doesn't bother me because obviously I think it's the same anyway. I believe, yeah, you can see a big old domed screw on the Sebenza 21. And then this one's a 31, big old dome screw too. You can see, especially compared to this guy. So that is what it is. I think 28-minute videos probably long enough. I will continue doing just kind of my impressions on this and other knives as I gain more experience and just kind of get more feedback from using the thing and figuring out what I do and don't like about it. Because that all comes through experience. So, well, palabra a tu madre, dudes. Cheers. Thank you guys for joining me live. I got 8 people right now. I think that's fucking awesome. That may be the most that I've ever had live. 7, down to 7. All right. Fuck you, man. Just kidding. Cheers, guys. Palabra a tu madre.